it's time for my review of The Rings of Power Season 1, Episode 2. In the past few days, accusations of racism have come out against people being critical of Amazon's The Rings of Power. So, as a public service broadcast, if you didn't enjoy The Rings of Power, Sir Lenny Henry has a message for you.
Is he a nutter?
All the makers of The Rings of Power wanted to do was remould and reweave the work of Tolkien. Not create their own individual piece of art, but to remould the work of somebody else. Reweave it, reimagine it, change its form to have more representation, to be more feminist. What could be wrong with that? What could possibly be wrong with rewriting Tolkien or Huckleberry Finn to make it more acceptable to the current day politics of Los Angeles? It's just amending history and art to be more compliant with how they want things to be now. They simply want to live in a world where every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing, day by day and minute by minute. History is stopped. Nothing exists for an endless present in which the party are always right. And they want to be the party. In a decade or so more, maybe politics will have shifted again, and then we can reimagine and reweave Lord of the Rings all over again to match whatever the new politics are. The older copies of the books, well, we can just burn them because nothing says you're on the right side of history quite like a good book burning. Guys, you do realise that when George Orwell wrote 1984, he didn't intend it to be aspirational. It's one thing for a sculptor in Afghanistan to make a sculpture from stone, his own piece of art. It's another for him to carve it from a near 2,000-year-old sculpture of the Buddha. A few days ago, Elon Musk came out on Twitter and was highly critical of the Rings of Power, saying, "Tolkien is turning in his grave. Almost every male character so far is a coward, a jerk or both. Only Galadriel is brave, smart and nice." This was covered in numerous media sources, but the one that stood out to me was the coverage in the magazine Men's Health. This article stated, "There's been a small contingent of viewers who object to the inclusion of non-white actors in this fantastical setting, and claim that this contradicts the vision of author J.R.R. Tolkien. In other words, black and brown hobbits and elves are bringing out the white trolls, including none other than billionaire tech founder Elon Musk, who tweeted that Tolkien would be spinning in his grave at the notion of the diverse casting." Now, isn't it amazing how Elon Musk criticised the notion of diverse casting in this person's view without mentioning either casting or diversity? Musk also had a reply from Neil Gaiman, saying, "Elon Musk doesn't come to me for advice on how to fail to buy Twitter, and I don't go to him for film, TV or literature criticism." Firstly, Elon didn't fail to buy Twitter. If anything, he's currently failing to not buy Twitter. Secondly, that's an ad hominem from Neil, and an appeal to authority all in one, while also managing no argument. The first part of Elon's comment is kind of true. Almost every male character so far in The Rings of Power kind of is a jerk, a coward or both. Where I disagree with him is what they've done to Galadriel, because now she's atrocious. She's selfish, a poor leader, insubordinate, rude and demanding, self-absorbed. It's astonishing that the writers seem to think that these traits are heroic. I reviewed episode 1 of this pile. I'd intended one 10-minute video, and instead it ended up as 3 10-minute videos. I can't do that again because it'll leave me no time to review She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Galadriel in the ocean, her front crawl ragged. She swims for shore in remarkably calm seas. And then we're back with the Harfoots again, as Nori Brandyfoot approaches probably Gandalf's flaming hole. And yeah, I've nothing more to add on that. No jokes. There's nothing here that would get me banned, YouTube. Nori is with her friend, Poppy Proudfellow, who's kind of a mixture of Merry, Pippin and Sam, all rolled into one, while being more annoying than all three of them combined. She tries to help Nori and instead pushes her into a flaming hole. Is that a metaphor for the series? You tell me. Nori's lucky and the fire is not hot, or her acorns likely would have caught fire. They load probably Gandalf into a cart and wheel him somewhere safe to spend the night, as they bicker and argue and... I could be watching something else right now. I could be watching Predator. I'm not sure if it was because I watched episode 1 and 2 back to back, but when I watched this a few days ago, I think this scene was the first time I fell asleep. No joke, I actually fell asleep watching this show. Next up, Bronwyn and the Plank investigate the ruined human settlement, finding no bodies. Bronwyn goes back to warn her village. Maybe Plank should have gone to tell the elves. No? Is Bronwyn going to do it? No. Is anyone going to go and tell the elves? Is Plank just going to go into that ominous hole with no backup, where he'll be at a disadvantage, with one woman knowing he was last seen in a hole? That seems monumentally unwise. Celebrimbor and Elrond arrive at Eregion, the capital of the Elven Smiths. Elrond is to help Celebrimbor make something. They need a lot of manpower to build a tower first, and it needs to be finished before spring, for unspecified reasons. Elrond suggests maybe the dwarves could help, as he is friends with the prince of nearby dwarf settlement of Khazad-dûm. The scenery is still really nice. The people I watched it with really appreciated seeing the living dwarven kingdom. I was quite enjoying it myself. Then they go into a small room and break rocks with hammers. Oh, and we're back with Nori Brandyfoot and probably Gandalf again. And I think this was the second time I fell asleep watching this episode. Half an hour has gone and precious little's happened. We're back with Galadriel in the next scene. She's in the middle of the ocean and stumbles upon a raft. The chances against that happening must have been astronomical, because from the maps it looks like she would have had to swim thousands of kilometres to get back near land. The people from the raft are from a shipwreck. But why would anyone be sailing out there in the first place? There's only the elf continent to the west, and it's completely sealed off by magic. They are suspicious of Galadriel until they find out that she's an elf, at which point they become actively hostile, so they have to die. Like in an 80s horror film, where the promiscuous girl always has to get killed. The people on the raft see a sail on the horizon, and one man tries to flag the ship down for help. One man on the raft cautions, "Corsairs prowl these waters," but it's not corsairs, it's the massive sea snake that shipwrecked the raft people in the first place. And corsairs operate here? Really? In the middle of nowhere, sharing water with that massive ship-destroying sea snake? Okay. The snake attacks, and only Galadriel and one man named Halbrand survive. There is more rock breaking. This is the only way Elrond could get in through the door in the first place, as the Dwarven Prince is rarely annoyed with him. Elrond doesn't even know why, and the Dwarf Prince wins at the rock breaking contest. Elrond gets him to explain finally why he's so angry. Elrond has not seen him for 20 years, he says. Elrond missed his wedding and the birth of his 2 children. It's unclear if Elrond ever even knew, and he does live an estimated over 1,000 kilometres away from the Dwarf Prince. It's a bit like someone from London being unhappy that their friend who lives in Italy missed their wedding that they may or may not have told them about. The elves and the dwarves have very different perspectives on time. What seems a long time to the Dwarf Prince is a blink of an eye for Elrond, who's immortal. This section is probably the best part of the episode. Elrond convinces the prince to allow him to apologise to his family for missing so much. He does this as a ploy to give him more time to win the Dwarven Prince over. The show doesn't give a very original depiction of dwarves. They hold grudges, they drink a lot. It's all the tropes, but it's fine. The actors do just fine. The sets are very good. I like the dwarven architecture and the craftsmanship. It's poignant that this is Khazad-dûm, what would become the Mines of Moria in The Lord of the Rings, that all this will in the future be ruins. The Dwarven Prince has a young tree growing in his house, gifted to him by Elrond many years prior. The prince's wife says he cares for it like a third child. She says, "Some said it would never grow in darkness." But the tree is clearly in the light. It's in full sunshine. This is still the best part of the show. The Dwarven Prince's wife softens his stance and finally is willing to listen to Elrond's proposal. Back on the raft, Galadriel accuses Halbrand of abandoning his companions. He unlashed his raft from theirs just before the sea snake attacked. This raises quite a few problems. Firstly, Galadriel was barely in a position to even see what happened. She was swimming away at the time. She asks what kind of a man would abandon his companions to death. But one of the raft people had just pushed her into the water to die, and she essentially did the same thing when she swam away. She also kind of did the same thing in episode 1, where she left one of her men to die in the snow. She's insufferable. She's a complete self-righteous hypocrite. Later he tells her that his hometown has been destroyed by orcs, and she tells him that he's going to personally take her to his settlement and show her what was destroyed. She doesn't ask, mind. She acts like the world, including him, is there to personally serve her. Meanwhile, back in the Southlands, Bronwyn goes to warn her town that the orcs have destroyed a neighbouring settlement, and that they're next. In the tavern, no one believes her. They don't even bother to check the next town. Back in her house, her son hears noises under the floor. There's an orc tunnelling under the floorboards. Meanwhile, Arondir the Plank is being chased through the tunnel at the bottom of the hole. He is eventually cornered and captured. Going down that hole is looking increasingly like a very poor decision. Bronwyn arrives back at her house. It's a mess. And what follows is an admittedly quite interesting scene, similar to something you'd usually find in a horror film. She sees the mess and hides as an orc appears. They hide as the orc searches. The orc eventually finds her after some tense scenes, and there's quite a brutal fight. Her and her son eventually win, and she takes the orc's head to the tavern and proves the men wrong. This time they believe her. We are back on the raft for the umpteenth time, and a storm is coming now. Galadriel lashes herself to a small mast, and as the storm hits, what are the chances? The mast is struck by lightning. The mast shears off, and Galadriel sinks into the deeps along with it. Now normally wood floats, so as a man of science, we can infer from this that Galadriel weighs more than a duck. In Khazad-dûm, the dwarves are hiding something. The prince and his father have a mystery box that they're keeping very secret. At the end of the episode, Galadriel's raft is found by a large ship. So, what did this episode amount to? In terms of entertainment, it may have struck out, but if their intention was to cure insomnia, they hit a home run multiple times. It cut between places far too much, and long sections were far too boring and slow. What's up for my next review? Next up is episode 4 of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So I've got that to look forward to.